All right. We're getting going here now. Now we're going. Now we're in business.
You're in the sweet spot now, are you?
Got a fresh spot. Fresh lines here now. Any truly the sweet spot now.
Yeah. You've been missing each other's wins.
All right, so we'll get it going here, guys. Welcome, everybody. We got the final pints in. Is Joe McKittrick in the room? There he is. Good man, Joe. Fair play. All right, well, welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight in this beautiful Chicago winter's evening. Grand. We'll get her going here. So we'll shush for now and let the intros, but definitely want to encourage questions from the audience. You know, we're setting this up as an open chat with the panelists here, and so fire away with questions. Oh, sorry, we have a sound check there. Is that me? Okay. Grand. Maybe everyone turn on and do a quick sound check on those mics before we get going here. All good? Good
Hello.
stuff. Great. Well, now, welcome. Before we get going, just a couple of quick words. I would like to, well, first of all, I saw Rory Moan down the back. I just want to congratulate them again, the Pierces, on winning the Nationals this year. Very hugely proud. Well done, Rory and team. I think, you know, as you'll go through the conversation tonight, if you're not familiar with GAA, Gaelic sports in general, you'll understand how big of an achievement that was, and I'm sure Rory will chip in later and tell us as well, give us an update on that. So welcome for any of you who, oh, there's Rory there, I was pointing down there, I thought you were there. Welcome, so we're my name is Rory Barnwell, I'm the president of the Ireland Network Chicago. So we're very happy to have you here, we're very happy to host these types of conversations. Very appreciative of the Department of Foreign Affairs that help fund some of these conversations. I see Seamus is here. Seamus has been carrying these IN conversations for many years, and congrats, Seamus. So it's just an opportunity to get together, have a chat, hear about things from an Irish perspective. We've got a great, unbelievable panel. I've had the privilege of talking to each one of these folks during the last week or so, kind of just getting a little bit of prep for the call and what we're going to talk about. And it's going to be a great conversation, I can guarantee that. So if you're not familiar with the Ireland Network, I'd encourage you to take a look at the website. If you're not a member, sign up. But we have great events, and this hopefully is indicative of the type of events that we have. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. Maybe we'll start at this end and work down, seeing as Colm's right beside me. Maybe if you guys could give a quick intro, and what perspective are you coming to tonight's conversation with?
So, good evening, and thanks for having me and the Ireland Network and everybody in the room. My name is Colm Egan, and officially, I'm the Gaelic Games Development Officer for Chicago. So that'll entail many things that'll come out through the conversation. Nationally, I have a responsibility for developing the game of hurling in the USGA. So our organization is the Gaelic Athletic Association, and in Chicago, I'm the Games Development Administrator. And thanks for having us.
I suppose we all have to stand up now. Thanks, Colin.
You don't have to, but...
My name is Annie Redmond. I think I'm actually a member of Ireland Network. I don't know if I renewed it this year. Maggie, maybe check on that for me. So I am the treasurer of Chicago GAA, but I'm also a longtime member of St. Mary's Camogie Club. It's the only camogie club in Chicago, and St. Bridget's Ladies Gaelic Football Club, which also were the North American champions this year. So Chicago did very well. We had four champions this year in the city, so it was a very, very, like as he said, it was a very big accomplishment. So I'm very happy to be here and answer any questions about growing up as an American, playing Gaelic sports, and expanding the game for getting more people to play. So.
You don't have standing.
Yeah,
Quitter.
My name is Sean Bracken. I'm Vice President of Development for Rugby Illinois, which is a youth and high school organization. My main job is to develop the kids, coaches, referees at the high school and middle school areas. Rugby Illinois started in 2007, and we've been growing. We have about 1,500 kids playing rugby in Illinois at the moment. Looking to grow that as we go forward. I've got two members of the Chicago Hounds down here at the back who can join in and help answer some questions as well.
I'd like to object because we were told we could bring backup.
How you doing, folks? I am stood up, just in case anybody's wondering. So my name's Dean Arrowsmith. I'm the founder and chairperson of Head in the Game, which is a mental health organisation based around having a positive discussion around mental health and making people open to discussing their mental health within sports. It's primarily based out of Ireland right now, but over the next 12 months we want to roll it out in the US, and we want Chicago to kind of be a hub for that. So I'm happy to, as the night goes on, to discuss a little bit more about mental health in sports and the positive impact working in teams and playing in teams can have on people's mental health.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Gary Doherty. I'm a retired Ireland international and also ex-Premier League player at Tottenham and Norwich. At the minute, I'm working at Chicago City Soccer Club, so if you want to feed me a few questions about how we're developing young players at the club, and also maybe a few old stories, if you're interested in a few old stories, I've had a few pints, so it might be a good time to hit me with it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary. I'm Nick Mulvaney from Dublin, and tell the joke that I tried to follow my granddad's steps over to Birmingham on a plane when I was 18, following some like his footsteps, and I ended up in the deep south of America in Mississippi and New Orleans. Played college there, semi-pro career, always coaching from the age of 16, and throughout the years between New Orleans, Chicago, London, decided I wanted to do my own thing, thought I could do it better, and founded Chicago City in 2013. It's our 10-year anniversary this year. And really excited to kind of share who we are, what we do, and kind of in terms of everything that's going on in this day and age, in terms of mental health and physical health, is what we're trying to push the boundaries in that. And we will be launching a Southside Chicago City with Gary leading it in, down with all those Irish down there. So keep an eye out for that.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, guys. So we've got soccer, rugby, all aspects of the GA covered here today, and Dean's obviously chipping in with the mental health aspect of the game. So I think maybe if we start with, for each of your respective areas, and we won't go in any particular order, but maybe start with the GA here because you're right here. But what's the state of your game today? And maybe just a quick, looking back, I came to Chicago in '97, and all my buddies would have played GA back then, and then I feel like it dropped off. I'm a soccer guy, if you can't tell, but maybe Colm, you could tell us, when did you come here, Colm?
So I came as a player in '94, so I'm heading for 29 years. Can't believe how long it is, but I'm heading for 29 years. We were probably the last wave of Morrison and Donnelly visas. I didn't come on a Donnelly visa. I came as a summer guy And unknown to me, my mother didn't want me to go home because she applied for a Morrison visa. And I had to go home and sit my Morrison visa interview after being in the US for a little while. So, yeah, but there was a very big wave of people living in Chicago that time, and the summer aspect was smaller. The championship in Ireland was very different. You weren't as available. The county players really weren't as available, so it was very different. But when I came to Gaelic Park, it was a very welcoming place. It was a very vibrant and nurturing place to land. If you wanted a job, maybe a girlfriend or even a wife, you could nearly find it in Gaelic Park if you were smart enough. So, that was the culture at the time, and I was in my mid-20s having the crack and continued to have the crack for quite a few years. But yeah, just going back, we were the very last. I mean, there is no real wave of immigration behind us.
I remember that because I feel like I was coming in '97. I felt like I would, Sean and Brian Drummy and Decky Byrne and Liam Murray and all those lads. They would have been the lads that were out in Chicago and that have, the Morrison lads that were out. And there was a big gap after that, right?
Well, I don't know of any visa that came after us. Now, I think we're actually getting maybe even a different kind of immigrant here now, where they're white-collar, techie people or people that are going into management positions, and of course they're welcome in Chicago GAA. But there was no real wave of immigration after us. But the 90s was vibrant. It kept going into the 2000s, and then as everything, there are waves. And maybe I'll let Annie handle the question on the next wave, because we had an extraordinary year last year in Gaelic Park.
Yeah. So Annie, maybe to that, just to continue, we'll come back to some of those points, Colin, because you touched on some key points there and that are going to kind of weave through everyone's conversation here, like visas and stuff like that. Annie, maybe, myself, I'm a dad of 3 young daughters. Like, how was it for you? I know growing up in Crinkle, County Offaly, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities for the girls. There was no girls soccer or girls anything. I mean, how was it for you getting into the sport from an early age?
Yeah, I mean, well, from GAA, yeah, it really wasn't much different than that, really, for the girls, like, I suppose, that you grew up with. My dad's from Carlow, so any Carlow people in the house? No? Yeah, that's the usual response that I expected. Just my sister, that's all. So, yeah, Quinn will be an honorary Carlow person. We need one other person to hold the other side of the banner in the parade, So, so my dad came here in the 70s to work, obviously, and he, does concrete still to this day. 70 years of age, still does concrete. But he grew up, he came over here and played hurling for St. Vincent's, and then he started Erin's own hurling club. So he was big in, long as I can remember going to Gaelic Park on a Sunday. We basically grew up there, spent all of our days there. The youth program that they had when I was little, unfortunately, wasn't the fantastic program that it is now. What the kids have now is absolutely phenomenal. But that didn't exist when I was little. It was very, very small, and it was pretty much just for boys. So I was wasn't exactly welcome. So I played every other sport that I could get my hands on: volleyball, basketball, soccer, baseball, everything. I didn't actually play in a proper club until I was a GA club until I was about 18, playing camogie, and I started Gaelic football the next year after. I was basically guilted into playing Gaelic football, but I'm glad I did. But yeah, no, the state of the games now, like as Colin mentioned, like last year we had probably one of the most successful years I think that Chicago GA has ever seen. Obviously, the 90s were fantastic with, like as Colin said, like with all the immigration that was there. The stands, you couldn't get a seat in the stands. Like you had to get there early and send the kids up for your beers. I was one of those kids. Yeah, they didn't want to give up the seat in the stands. Like, here's 20, go get around. So it did dwindle off, after 9/11. Really, we really saw the lowest point of the GAA. After that, the immigration was almost nil to, slim to none, and it's starting to get better. But I think actually with COVID, what happened was, there were no J1ers coming out, there were no sanctions, nothing like that. It was purely home-based, purely American-born, and that really kind of forced a lot of the American-born kids were thrown into these games, and they just got so much better. And that our championship has gotten so much better, where we have American girls that are starters and Irish girls on the line, which, you know, in previous years really may not have happened. So really, I guess, I wouldn't say blessing in disguise, but it really did kind of develop our home base a lot. So with the Chicago GA that was this summer, we had, you know, the CYC, the Youth Championships, which was a huge undertaking, and the Youth Board, and the Adult Board hosted the North American Finals, which was the largest North American Finals that we've ever seen. Over 122 teams from all over the U.S., Canada, and the Cayman Islands actually have a lot of teams in the Cayman Islands, a lot of Gaelic footballers down there. And it was a huge undertaking, and I think the major success that we had this year was the live streaming. So shameless plug for my sister over there. So she actually volunteers every Sunday. She live streams every game for free all day, from start to finish every Sunday. I think we had one of the clips that we had this summer. We had over 2 million views all over the world. So you had the likes of like Joe Canning and Pat Spillane that was here a few weeks ago, telling us that they're watching the games in their pub at home, live streaming the games on a Sunday night. And one of the reasons for that is a gentleman sitting here, John Quinn. A round of applause for John Quinn. So John Quinn is the voice of Chicago GAA, so you'll hear him on the live stream. So if you don't follow the page, please do. I think you'll get good entertainment and good for a laugh.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, we'll come back to some great points there as well. Maybe move down to Sean. Full disclosure, Sean's also from Offaly, so I have to go easy on him. So, Sean, maybe if you could touch on, you know, rugby over the years. I mean, you've been here since the early 90s as well. How has rugby maybe grown up in Tullamore, and how has rugby evolved in your time in the States, and where is it at now?
Actually, I came when I was 19 in 1987. So
I'm aging you there now, yeah.
I grew up playing rugby, Gaelic football, hurling, played a little bit of soccer, but rugby was my passion. I had the honour of playing in Lansdowne Road 3 times as a young lad. I moved to England for a while, played a bit there. As soon as I landed in New York, I played with the New York Athletic Club, National D1 club. Moved to Chicago about 10 years after that, and kind of got away from being involved with rugby, but would always go out to the bars and watch the Six Nations and stuff. And when my son was about 9 or 10, some friends that I was involved with in rugby asked me if he was interested in playing. So I brought him along, and he started playing and really enjoyed it. Then, you know, life brought him in another direction, but I stayed involved with the organization. It was founded in 2007, and there's been a lot of work done with the awareness of kids rugby. There's, you know, everybody in Ireland knows a lot more about rugby than your average American, where they know baseball, football, hockey. You know, soccer is even, you know, over the last 35 years has come a very long way, where rugby has kind of stayed back, and I think a lot of that has to do with exposure in high schools and colleges. So that's one of our focuses at the moment. And we're also working with little kids from 4 and 5 years up in middle schools and park districts. It takes a lot of, you know, manpower. We're all volunteers. I think with a growing sport like rugby, you know, money is always a barrier. But I want to thank the Ireland Network for promoting our raffle that we had last month, where an actual member of the Ireland Network won the 3rd prize, which was a 75-inch TV. So it wasn't rolling.
Maybe you could tell everyone what the first prize was. It was a great first prize.
The first prize was a trip for 4 to Ireland, to the Ireland-England game on St. Patrick's weekend. Flights, 2 nights hotel accommodation, and 4 tickets to the game. The second prize then was the same package for 2 to the French game. So, you know, we had to thank, you know, Ireland Network for sponsoring, and Irish Rugby Tours sponsored one of the prizes, and the Chicago Hounds sponsored one of the prizes as well. So it's, you know, the visibility of rugby is really important for us getting it out there. That's one of my main jobs, along with, you know, developing new clubs, helping existing clubs. We have about 35 clubs throughout the state and about 1,700. Well, we're looking to get back to around 1,800. Our highest numbers was in 2017-18. We had, I think it was about 2,200 kids from 5 years old up to 19 when they leave high school. Once they leave high school, they're on to college or club. So it's an organization constantly growing. We're always looking for volunteers. It's a great sport. One of our slogans is developing youth through rugby. You know, so they get a lot more from rugby than just running out and competing. You know, there's the pillars of rugby really teach them a lot about life, and a lot of the American kids that get involved with rugby see sport and competition from a very different level. You know, based on the culture and the ethos of the game that we promote, and the kids get the experience of that. It's, you know, it's a part of their lives. You know, I think anybody that's ever been involved with rugby, they can take it anywhere in the world and they've got friends. It happened for me when I came to the States and in England. You know, pair of boots and know how to play scrum half and you were set. You know, so but it's a true passion. Again, it's, you know, it's all 100% volunteer, and we rely on parents, you know, expats, you know, young guys coming up out of college that we have in our player development program right now who are giving back to the game. That it's, you know, it's vital for that to happen, and we try to create the resources to continue to promote the game that way.
Brilliant. I'm going to come back to some great points there, Sean, and specifically on community and the ethos of rugby as well. Maybe I'll come back to you, Dane. I'm just going to flip over to Nick real quick, just to continue the theme of, you know, what is the state of we've heard from GAA obviously here and rugby. What's the state of youth soccer today, Nick, in general terms? We'll come back to specifically Chicago City, but where would you say we are at this current point in time with... Well,
let's not talk about the national team right now.
Yeah.
I mean, in the US, that'd be
we're
good.
being recorded as well here, so...
Oh, yeah. Obviously, it's in a very, very positive place. The World Cup coming in 26 is an exciting time for everybody to be involved in it. For me, being here now nearly 22 years, to see the evolution of it and the growth is second to none. And to see, I guess, the younger generation of parents have played it. So it's a bit more prevalent, I guess, than it used to be, where parents just played American sports, like you said. There's more of a knowledge. So now there's more pressure on us in the coaching world, I guess. And for us, we are in a pay-to-play model, which does carry a lot of negativity. But because of that, I guess tying in Chicago City and kind of where I come from in the model I wanted to create was it's more than just a soccer club in terms of winning games at U9 and U10. We don't care about winning. And I stand by that until I die, but winning as in human beings or in society is more important. And I just think, like, we'll tie in Dean in a bit as well. I think it's so important. But all in all, I think it's in a really positive place. There's a lot of, especially in Chicago, the European, kind of South American, you know, it's very diverse. Everybody's playing. It's cheap as well, right? Put down 2 jumpers and kick a ball around. And for us, leaning in on kind of like, not to repeat myself too much, and it's a buzzword nowadays, is the holistic approach. We use soccer as a tool to develop youth. We know what's going on in this city in terms of crime, gangs, etc., etc. And we've been able to use soccer as a tool for that. And for me, it's an exciting time for us. We are growing insane. We're picking up probably 10, 20 kids a week right now, which is mental. And the drop of American football with concussions has probably helped us, which we don't mind. But all in all, yeah, we're in a really positive, exciting place.
Yeah. Maybe just come to Gary real quick. Gary gave a very modest introduction of himself. For anyone who doesn't know Gary, he's a bit of a legend, for Ireland soccer, and many Tottenham Hotspur fans would say the same. I'm a Liverpool fan myself, so I wouldn't say it from that perspective. But Gary, maybe what was different about yourself? You obviously took the path. You grew up in Donegal till you were like 6, and then moved over to England with the family and kind of started out there. But what, Nick came here earlier on to the States. What attracted you about coming over to the States now at this point in your life?
Like I say, I was with the Ireland team, and I remember coming over at 21, and we had the US Cup. I don't know if you still remember that. Yeah, we played in New York. Obviously, the Irish areas, you wanted to play matches to get a good crowds in. So we played in New York, we played in Boston, and we played in Chicago as well. And I think from an early age, I kind of liked the whole American culture and stuff like that. So that always attracted me. And I had a few chances actually when I was about 30, coming to the kind of end of my playing career, to come over to America and play in a few MLS clubs. And I turned it down to stay in England and stuff like that. I always kind of regretted it. So once I did retire at 35, I always had it in my head that, right, I'm going to go do my coaching, and then I'm going to start my coaching career in America for sure.
Brilliant. Yeah. You enjoy it?
I love it, yeah. It's exactly what I thought it would be. I was in Boston for 2.5 years. Loved it there, but I feel Chicago's a better fit for me. It's a bit of a bigger city. Coming from London, I felt Boston was a little bit small, so coming to Chicago's been fantastic for me. I've been there since June, and I've loved every minute of it.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Maybe Dean, if we come back to you and just kind of continue that, maybe from the perspective of youth. I mean, me and Dean worked together for many years on AYSO. You were the director of coaching, and maybe can you announce your new position now?
No.
No. You can't. Okay, so forget that. But maybe if you could talk about youth. The mental health aspect. Where does that fit into today's landscape?
Yeah, it's probably, especially over the last 2 to 3 years, obviously since the pandemic, it's gotten a lot more prevalent of youth. And I'm sure, Nick, you would have seen at your club, that the young players that are coming through now have a lot more anxiety going out on the pitch. There's a lot more issues with players getting out onto training, training in groups, because they're used to being on their own for the best part of a year, and it's been very, very difficult. And then you look at just how society is, and everyone in the room has probably said at one point or another, if they have kids, they're like, we weren't brought up this way or whatever, when we were doing it. But then the kids today are exposed to so much more. Like, I coached, as Rory said, I've coached at AYSO for the past 8 years out in LaGrange, and the kids are able to tell you about Donald Trump, they're able to tell you about Joe Biden, they're able to tell you about politics at 9 years of age, and they know this kind of stuff, and they're being kind of, it's hard to avoid it because they're all on TikTok, they're all on Instagram, they have all these, they're able to look at social media, so they're just exposed to so much more, so the innocence is kind of lost on kids. And the biggest thing that kind of I've noticed is, and I'm sure, and from conversation that I've had with Nick down through the years, we're trying to give them their innocence back. Is like all that stuff is parked to the side when they get out on the field, and I'm sure with the GAA and the rugby, it's very similar. Is you want them just to go out and have fun and just be kids for 90 minutes. For any of us that grew up in Ireland, and I don't know because I didn't grow up in the US 20, 30 years ago, but when you grew up in Ireland, you went out at 5 o'clock at night and you got called in for dinner at 7 or 8, but you could be 10 miles away and you still heard your mother calling you. But but that's how it was back then. And nowadays it's, kids have soccer for 90 minutes, then they've got swim lessons, then they've got violin lessons, so everything is structured for them. So one thing that I try to do in our coaching, and what I try to do with our coaches, is have it a little bit unstructured. Like when it comes to that maybe last 30 minutes of a practice, just let them play. Just don't coach. Don't let them hear your voice. Just let them go out and play, and let them be kids for 30 minutes, because it's very difficult for the kids nowadays to just have that. And when you do that, like we didn't do that initially, and Rory, you would know this from whenever I first started, where everything was a little bit more structured. But once we started giving them those 30 minutes, the players enjoy it, and that's the biggest thing. Is you get kids coming back, and as Nick said, obviously with Chicago City, they're doing a great job. That they're getting 20, 30 kids, because I know Nick has a similar model and a similar philosophy to what I would have. And I think just in general in any sport, that's what we need to do for the kids. We need to let them be kids, and it's we live in a society where that's difficult, and just providing that is something that's very important.
Yeah, just for some context, Dean would have coached all three of my daughters at various age levels. I always really admired how he did that unstructured, as opposed to, and Nick, I know you believe in the same philosophies as well, you just said it, winning's not everything. It's player development above winning, right? I mean, you got to develop the players. When I see club soccer in America, I see kids showing up with the soccer ball in their bag, and they walk to the field and unzip it and take the ball out and play for 90 minutes or whatever it is, and then put it back in the bag and don't take it out until next Tuesday or whatever. It's like a violin lesson, as you said. It's not, as opposed to when we grew up, you kicked the ball up the street and you kicked the ball off the wall, and you set out till 9 o'clock at night. So always admired your philosophy on that, Dean. Maybe Colin, we could switch to you. I mean, what parallels would you see there with youth development in GAA?
So it's great, really, to hear the lads all speaking of the same ethos, because the GAA, to be fair, has evolved. And I'm a coach educator as well as a coach myself, and we would be definitely on the same page as this. We'd be talking about free play. We'd be talking about the holistic approach. I must be reading the same coaching books. A big thing, just because we've just now touched on it, the street play or the just meeting each other is a difficult one. I have daughters as well, and it would have been difficult in our neighbourhood now to encourage them to go out and play on the street or play in the local park. That is, I'm also married to an American woman who may not have allowed them down the road to the park. But the truth is, when Wimbledon is on, you're a tennis player. When the World Cup is on, you're a soccer player. When the Rugby World Cup is on, you're a rugby player. And when you're seeing Gaelic games, you're going out and trying to be Joe Canning or the top players. That's where it's at. And it's hard on us as coaches to replicate that in an hour and a half. And if I can get the answer from the lads here to replicate street play in a session, I will absolutely eat it up, because that's where we need to be at. I've no doubt about that. I had an interesting one in there's a GAA coaching conference in Dublin every year, and there was a Belgian, he's not Dutch, he's Belgian. The Belgian Soccer Federation, they drew a line under their soccer program about 15 years ago, and they completely revolutionized it. And they talked about, he was in the Belgian action, at the time he took over, they only wanted ripe bananas. He was talking about, they wanted ripe bananas, but no, he said we want every color of banana, whether it's ready or whether it's finished or whether it's ripe. And they broke it all down, and they started their youth program as one-on-one in the middle with two goalies. Then that was when you're 6 and 7. Then you go to 2-on-2 with two goalies. And that was when they're 9. And then when there's a certain amount of goal scorers, the goalies come out and the outfielders go in. That's what we did as kids, right? So I'm encouraging that in Chicago, all over our clubs in the youth program in Chicago. We're using, Chris van der Hagen is the man's name. We are using this model where when we do our drills and when we do our bit of play, they don't go into maybe 7-a-side games. They go in, if they're 6 and 7, they go into 1v1. And by the way, if you give a kid a Gaelic football or a soccer ball, but in a Gaelic football, they'll pick it up and they'll run for 15 yards and they'll kick it, right? Now, we know they're not allowed to carry the ball for 15 yards, but the result is that they're scoring, they're succeeding, right? And then the next thing, you can get them bouncing, and then you can get them soloing. This was a soccer model where they're getting a shot literally on every play. So this is a model that we're using. I'd like to think we're evolving. I mentioned it earlier. The GA is doing a good job at coach education, and that's part of my brief, both in Chicago and nationally. So, but if I can get the secret of street play or park play from this panel, that would be another step in the evolution.
Just to jump in there, Rory, because that's, to me, is the biggest key, is the coach education. Because, especially in our model, pay to play, and I'm not sure if you guys deal with it from a volunteer, but the parents are always trying to drive the winning, right? They want to win games on the weekend. But we have to stand up as a leadership and educate. And that starts with us educating coaches that can educate the parents. And that's something I know we live by. I'm not going to say it's the secret sauce, but it's definitely working. And I always tell the story when I worked for a club in the burbs in Chicago for a long time. One of my good friends, he's Welsh, and he would push the parents away as far as he possibly could because they were annoying him. And I remember learning, that's the best lesson I ever learned, because when I started the club, I brought them closer and closer and closer and said, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. And then they bought into the philosophy and the long-term development plan. But I love that you talk about the coach education, because it's huge.
And we see, again, we're on a bit of a minority sport now. To be fair, Gaelic Games is a minority sport in the United States. So bringing the parents closer is key. If I can convince the mom that the child is not going to die in the hour and a half that I have them, I'm way ahead of the game. So if you don't have the moms on your side, you're screwed. And I'm sure you guys are finding that as well.
Even at the national team level, right? Last Giorena.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You can deal with that controversy. But yeah, I've always seen my role as a sales job. It's not even as a coaching job. It's a sales job to show that Gaelic Games is a viable sport on the landscape of Chicago. And that sales job entails having the mom on your side, having the granny on your side, having granddad when they bring to practice, that they don't stay in the car that you do to bring them in, that the child also goes home and wants a hurley. I mean, that's a sales job. That's not a coaching job. That's a sales job.
Maybe Gary, so obviously, sorry, I'll move over here. I'm getting feedback. Gary, obviously you're subscribing to the same philosophy, working with Nick and working, I think we're all reading the same coaching manuals, to Colin's point. How would that compare and contrast? Like, you obviously came up through, I'm guessing, not putting words in your mouth here, but probably a more old school approach to football. I mean,
yeah, the whole kind of free play was great, and then it gets you up to about 16, and then it kind of gets more serious. And that can be tough because obviously we don't want to keep pushing that winning's important, but when they start getting to 15 and 16 and you're trying to progress into maybe the professional game, I guess winning does become a little bit more important because you're going to get more scouts at your game and stuff like that. So it's just about, especially at the young age, you just want to get them out there, playing, enjoying the sport. That's a massive one, especially in America where you've got hundreds of sports. You can play soccer one day, think, oh no, I don't really like this, and then go and play another 10 sports. So you want to get the kids enjoying it, but then I deal with a little bit older guys that maybe will go to the college level, where it will be a little bit more intense, so you're trying to up the, I guess, the seriousness of it and stuff like that. But for sure, at a young age, you want to just let them have fun. And from our point of view, like you said, the pay-to-play model, you want them to have fun because, like I say, they can just go off and play any other sport. This isn't like, I guess, England, where you've maybe got 2 or 3 sports that you could enjoy. America, they've got boundless amounts of sports. So yeah, we want them to have fun, but again, when they get a little bit older, maybe the 16, 17-year-olds, you want to prepare them for the seriousness of playing at college level, because you don't want them to go into college football and be shocked by, this is actually serious now, it's not just fun with your friends.
Yeah, no, great point.
So it's a different, but for sure, up until 15, you want them having fun, and you want them to enjoy the sport. Like I say, soccer's still a little bit new to America.
Have to have a passion for it, for sure.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Maybe. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, that's actually kind of a selling point that we use to try to retain some of the adult females to play, Gaelic football and camogie. It's especially like competitive girls. Like, not everybody gets a college scholarship. Very few kids, get to play college sports, and even smaller percentage get to play professionally. But they still have that competitive spirit that they want to win something. Like, they don't want to play in a softball pub league where, yeah, it's fun, but it doesn't, it's great to win and all that, but like, if they play Gaelic sports, they get to play on, against teams from all over the country, and they get to win like a tangible medal, like and a trophy and a cup with the team that they've trained with all year and all winter and fundraised with, and it kind of builds that team, that family spirit, the things that they kind of miss from high school and they miss from college sports. And that's, you don't get to, not many adults, not many sports get to enjoy that like the GAA has. Yeah,
no, definitely. Annie, I was going to come back to you. Sean, I was going to come to you next, just as a heads up, but to switch the conversation maybe towards challenges. I mean, what challenges did camogie specifically these days? I mean, what challenge?
None whatsoever.
I guess we are being recorded. Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. We're flying it, yeah. No, yeah, with camogie especially, like I think people look at, like, especially people that didn't grow up like I grew up watching the game. I knew what it was, and we had the advantage of having that background, and a lot of them Irish American girls, they know what the game is, so that's half the battle. It's just getting like American players that have no idea what the game is, and they watch it, and you show them a video on YouTube. This is what hurling is, and they watch like professionals, like JJ Delaney and all these people, and they're like, I'm gonna lose my hand, like watching, I'm getting my head taken off. Like, it's just, they look at, especially hurling, especially they get outside looking in. It's I've actually had more injuries playing football than I ever did playing camogie, but that's a big challenge for us. And then a major challenge in the U.S., not just specific to Chicago, but just all GAA clubs in the U.S. that is different to maybe Ireland or even in England, is geography. Like, when we go to North American finals, we're playing Boston, San Fran, teams like that. We've never seen these girls before. Never seen them. Didn't know who they were. We see their names on a piece of paper, their sanctions, maybe what county they came from. Hey, do you know that you're calling people that you know from the town, like, hey, what is this one any good, or what's she like, or you have no idea what these teams are like until the ball's thrown in. So that's a big challenge, and getting games at a competitive level. Like, we're actually lucky, really, in Chicago that we do have a lot of clubs around us. Like, we have, Indy and St. Louis and Twin Cities and all those that we can get games and tournaments, but that's a major, major challenge for us is just the geography of it and playing in tournaments. And we don't have a league like they do for the rest of the clubs in Chicago, which we're very lucky to have Gaelic Park, that we have a very competitive league for men's football, ladies football, and hurling.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big one, the geography aspect. Sean, what would you say yourself from a rugby perspective? What are the biggest challenges for the game at the moment today in the States?
Well, just listen to Colm, as being a minority sport. I would consider rugby in the United States as a minority sport. We don't have any varsity support in schools or colleges, although there are more and more universities and colleges, both D1 and D2, that are starting to create some type of scholarship pathway for players. But just to touch on the coaching, it's very similar. One of our main focuses with kids is introducing the game and making sure that they have fun through game-based philosophy and player interaction. There's lots of laws and stuff in rugby. Kids get confused as to what they're doing, so we try help them figure it out themselves. If instead of telling them, we're asking them. But it's interesting that the kids having fun in all of the sports is our number one focus. With regards to the challenges, probably in common with Gaelic games, it's not, most people in the States don't know what rugby is, other than that college sport where everybody gets drunk and runs around naked afterwards. Which is many years ago.
Only that one time.
Still got those pictures, I think.
So generating pathways, for next level, when kids pass that 16-year-old age group where competition becomes important. That's where I see our struggles, and where most of our growth, let's say, to appear on a national level. It's the Rugby World Cup is the third largest sporting event in the world every 4 years. In the States, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's visibility. We have a professional organization in the States now called Major League Rugby, and we just got a new team here in Chicago.
Maybe just give everyone a quick kind of heads up about that if they haven't heard about the Chicago Hounds.
Well, I'd love if Dave Clancy would.
You can do that after then. Yeah. We'll do that after then.
Yeah. Well, Dave is the expert on that, and I'd let him speak in on it. If he wants to, grab the mic a little bit later and say a few words on that.
Maybe Nick. Sorry, we're done.
Yeah, it's just one of those. having a professional organization in Chicago allows the kids to identify that there is a pathway to a professional organization that they can actually have a career at. That it's through going through our organization into college and then on into a professional organization is really going to help boost the popularity of the game.
We mightn't get you a professional contract, but if you come to Gaelic Park on a Sunday, you might get a girlfriend or a boyfriend or worse.
Pack of potato.
Well, I'll tell you, I have to agree with that. My younger brother Jimmy actually met his wife at Gaelic Park.
She's from Tullamore. She was from Tullamore as well. Nick, I know soccer's on a tear and there's a lot of positive momentum and the World Cup's coming up. What challenges would you say are there in terms of...
I think for me, I'd like to touch on Chicago, and I think one of the main reasons we are in a pay-to-play model is because of facilities. We're being charged like $250 an hour for a 9v9 or 11v11 field, and so we have to charge. And so we do a lot of community outreach, and we just had one this past Saturday. We had over 100 kids from inner city that it was free to them. It was supported by one of our partners, Big Shoulders Fund. But the field was $650 an hour for an indoor turf field. So it's really difficult to do more. And the understanding of I say this openly to anyone that wants to talk about the pay-to-play model is to bring in the top coaches that parents want to pay. And there is obviously that search for the dream to go to play in college, which is part of it. And there is a big percentage of that. But for me, it's facilities and, I guess, communities working with our kind of organizations to allow us to go in and run things either for free or for cheaper to allow us to get more people into the sport. So for me, it's facilities in Chicago. Even though you probably all see turf fields being built every other week, which is great, but they're expensive. And then the adult leagues have the money, they take over them. So
how do we make soccer more inclusive or diverse? Because it is, let's be honest, it's a white suburban sport at the moment. Like talking broadly on the North American level,
It's given I know we're live, and that's why I have to be careful. I just feel there needs to be a better job done from leadership. All right, U.S. Soccer HQ is in Chicago. I've never met one person from there. Right, that's not good. We're bang in the middle of the city. We're on the streets. We're on the grass. We're doing everything that we can possibly do within our kind of remit, I guess. But it's awareness. It's those other, let's say, the cultures in the city that can't afford it. They frown upon what we do because they're like, I'm not paying for that. But they'll pay $10, $15 to park and to go into an indoor facility throughout the city. So it's trying to educate that. How important the coaching is, and not just necessarily from a running and activity. Everything we've just talked about, from mental health, physical health, just being a good person in society, being able to go on to college as a professional and just have some sort of purpose and drive within your life. But it's still an ongoing. But it's improved. I mean, I have some stores. I used to go into some of the neighborhoods in Chicago, and I joke now. It never worked because a white ginger Irishman with an accent, it's not going to fly. So we've got better. We've even more diverse staff, but that's helped as well to kind of open up those doors. So I'm excited in what we've done the last 12 months, and I'm looking forward to what we can do in the future. So if anyone else has any...
I would say kudos. I mean, you have been doing a great job, and for anyone that wants to check out Chicago City Soccer Club, I mean, you are doing a lot of outreach there into the community. Maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe, Dean, if we could touch on just the community aspect in general. I mean, how is community important with sports? I mean, we'll start with soccer. That's obviously your background, but I think, Colin, you can chip in, and Annie from the GAA perspective as well. How do sports foster the community? And particularly, we're all, a lot of room, we're expats here. How does that?
Yeah, I think it's just it's very important, especially for expats. It's just giving the example of me and you, Rory, like at the club out in LaGrange. Rory and me were the only Irish people for a long time, and I got into a leadership role where I was able to put who played on certain teams and who was coaching certain teams. So because I knew there was an Irish fella, I made sure that the Irish coach was coaching the Irish fella's daughter, so that I just had someone from home that I could speak to. So it's very important. And I would look at the GAA, and unfortunately in the role that I've had over the last 8 years, it's very difficult to get involved in the GAA. I was actually signed up for 2 clubs in 2018 and 2019. I got the 2 training sessions and I never got to play a game just because the soccer season kind of runs in conjunction. But I was always quite envious of the GAA community, especially the Pearses. I know there's representatives here tonight. When you look at their social media, like, there's people in this room tonight that this event is helping their mental health because they have looked forward to nothing else than being in a room listening to Irish people speak, being in a room full of Irish people having pints before it, having more pints after it with Irish people. It's very important to have that and have that sense of community, and that's something that for me, not just for young kids, but even for the adults, for the people that are on the sidelines, for volunteers, for volunteer coaches, having that community is it's so important. And especially, as you say, Rory, for expats, is just having people that you can connect with and people that know what you're going through. And, you know, in the club that I've been in with AYSO, we have coaches from Brazil, Argentina. Am I allowed to say England in here? Yeah, English coaches.
We can bleep it out later.
But we have, you know, we have a diverse group of coaches that are in our club. But the one thing that's in common is we're all traveling here, you know, into this country that we're not from. So you build that kind of friendship with people and you build that community. And when you have those bad days, someone on your team knows what you're going through, and it just helps you get through that. So that's why I think it's important.
Well, I get both Annie's and Colin's taking this because I think you guys obviously have the community aspect. I mean,
yeah, yep. I can think of two girls in off the top of my head that were you know shy kind of high school girls that we came across, and I actually met one of them at Irish Fest. We had a booth set up at Irish Fest at Gaelic Park, and you know was quiet as a mouse, didn't say a word, was kind of picked on in school, and because everybody knows how horrible that is, like. And she started playing Gaelic sports, and she just flourished. And her mom was so appreciative. She was like, "Thank you so much, because this is what she needed." And I think it works the opposite way too. Like with a lot of American girls that maybe don't have any Irish connections, especially like they don't have cousins and they don't have in Ireland anybody they can call up and, "Hey, I'm coming over. Can I stay at your place?" kind of thing. And we have a lot of American girls that played for the St. Mary's and the St. Bridget's over the years that have no Irish connections, and they now have friends all over the world just from girls that have been out over the summer. Like
I feel like the GA have done such a great job, and just what you said there, like, "Hey, I'm coming out for the summer. Oh, well, we'll find a place for you to stay. We'll get you set up with a job." That whole extra element to it is just wrote the book for it.
We don't have coaches from Brazil or England, but worse, we have, well, not worse, that's the wrong word. We have Donegal, we have Mayo, we have Kerry. In coaching courses, and this is a fact, in coaching courses I have to talk about our accent, because we are not coaching a young fella from Tipperary or Galway. We are coaching Billy or Jack, who's from the United States, and hopefully their neighbour. So that's where you evolve, is their neighbours coming in, and they might be coming from a Polish family or a Hispanic family. And it is a part of my coaching course that you do have to temper your accent sometimes. Not entirely sure if that was the question, but do you have a question?
Yeah. So, well, we were talking about the community aspect, but when I came out to Chicago, I would have gone up to Gunter Murphy's and met with Sean, and you were probably sitting up there with Sean, and that was where you came to kind of suss out who was around, where we're going for a job. But I feel like that, and Sean, will come to you from the rugby perspective for the same question. But that extended community atmosphere, and Gaelic Park is a family more than just a sporting organisation.
Yeah, and look, if there's a message to go out, that was the ethos 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 60 years ago. And that ethos is probably stronger now than it's been in years and years and years. And to be, again, to our members and to any budding members, you will be included and you will be important. And again, another part of some of the stuff that I do, we had this discussion in a club last night, in a juvenile club in Chicago last night. I asked the question. It was a statement with a question at the end of it. We have people in this room that have skill sets other than lifting a ball or striking a ball. There are parents coming into our organization, as I'm sure there are yours, where we should be using the skill sets that are coming into us. And to grow a community out of that, if we work at it, it's quite doable. Now you have, an accountant coming in, maybe bringing a certain skill set to your club. You have a graphic designer coming in with a certain skill set to your club. You have a mom that's coming in that's able to run a household. I can promise you she can run a Gaelic Games club, 100%. So for sure community is important. Annie touched on the summer players and the group. Just a few facts. Didn't really hit on it earlier because I had a little gander at it earlier. Last year we registered 650 players in Chicago. Not social members, not members of Gaelic Park, 650 players. Every column inch in Ireland spoke about the summer players that came into that, the Rian O'Neills and the high-profile players. There was 150 sanctions, 76 of them J1s. So the J1s are probably coming anyway. The other ones are the lads or girls that are headhunted. How small of a percentage is that in the 650? We're putting 500 local boys, men and women in the adult case, on the field, and trust me, the bleachers are full of their parents, their aunties, their uncles. The patio is full of people that maybe employ them or want to be part of the whole gig. So yes, for sure, Gaelic Games does a good job, and it is something to keep going though.
Yep, for sure. You excuse me, brought up a great point there. I'll come back to Nick and Gary here in a minute to talk about the visas. But first, maybe Sean, if you could finish off the community aspect. I mean, I'm not a rugby guy, but rugby always struck me as a place where expats got together, and you could, it was always a great. You always met a great foreign legion at rugby events. I mean, what would you mention from a community perspective?
Absolutely. Expats like English, Irish, Scots, Welsh, New Zealand, South Africa, Argentina. I again, don't know too much about the English or any of the other expats, but I know with the Irish ones, it would be someplace like Gunta Murphy's or Galway Arms, that would have connections. A bar that I go into every once in a while. A guy walked up to me. He says, "You're involved with rugby, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." Yeah. He said, "My nephew is just coming out from Ireland for the summer. He's probably going to stay for a year or so. Can you help me find a club for him?" And I did, and I hooked him up with the Chicago Lions, and he brought 3 friends that ended up playing with the Chicago Lions. So that, I think the sense of community is obviously there from an Irish perspective. But to go to Colm's point there about identify very much with how you get into the community with the parents, siblings. You want to get a post up on Facebook. Go to a kid's older brother and he's boom, you're done. Because for me doing it, it's difficult. And I always talk to parents. What's your background? And you will find the accountant that's willing to help, and and I definitely agree with if you've got a club with young kids, you generally go to that mom who's there first with the kids, and you do your best to rope her in to help out, because again, volunteer organizations, you need every ounce of help you can get, because as the kids grow up, the parents move along with the kids, and you're bringing in new faces. You have to reteach them all how to register kids, and it's just a constant movement, but it's passion. It's lots of work, but it's passion.
Yep. Colm, you touched on it briefly there. I was going to come over and talk about just one common thread that seems to go through all the codes here is visas. And you mentioned the heyday of Gaelic Games was in the mid-90s when everyone was out in Morrison visas. Maybe Nick and then Gary, if you could touch on maybe Gary, you got the mic in your hand. Even yourself personally, getting out here and
like I say, once I retired, I knew that America was going to be my where I wanted to live and where I wanted to be based. So I straight away got the business visa, so the E2 business visa. So my plan was to come over to Boston and set up what Nick set up. So that's why I admire what you did. I remember you telling me the stories of how you set it up and stuff like that, because I know it's not easy. So I came over to Boston, kind of using my Irish links and stuff like that. And I have to say the Irish parents were fantastic for me, but kind of COVID hit and stuff like that. So, and like I say, I found Boston a little bit too small. So I was on the E2 business visa, so I got a 5-year one. So I guess being an ex-player was a little bit easier for me. So yeah, that was kind of handy enough, but I assume it's a lot harder. Like you say, you were over on the Morrisons. A lot of the parents I met in Boston were all on the raffle one, right? I thought that was made up when I saw it on telly, but they all seemed to be, everyone I spoke, all the parents were like, oh yeah, I came over on the raffle one. I thought, God.
Yeah, the raffle one was the Morrison.
Was that was that the other name for it? Sorry, I didn't realise. So you're a raffle winner as well? I'll add you to my list of...
I'm actually a perpetual J1er. I can remember the J1. But so as I was saying, like, yeah, Sean and the guys would have been the last of the Morrison visas, and there's a kind of a gap, and then it was the few J1ers that showed up in 97, 98, you know?
So just on that, though, the clubs that survived were the ones that evolved. Yeah. The clubs that ran themselves on the old model, the club that only wanted to put the best team on the field and maybe neglected 2/3 of their own playing population by putting the best team in the field were the ones that died on the vine in Gaelic game circles. In the US, and in USGA, who was the governing body, the clubs that survived and the clubs that evolved were the ones that survived. Certainly in the bigger cities. The other huge growth in USGA is outside of the Bostons, Chicagos. It's in the Indianapolises and the Milwaukees and the Denvers and other places that wouldn't traditionally be reliant on Irish-born immigrants, basically. So, but to bring it back to a Chicago perspective, if you were a club that realized that you weren't going to get an immigration population, you evolved into using and coaching American players. That's where the youth program is so strong, because now the adult clubs are really, really, really helping to grow the youth population, and we're graduating those players now into the likes of the Patrick Pierces and the Parnells and the teams that are definitely evolving. The Chicago Patriots were one of the first all-American clubs. I'm going to stop naming clubs now because I'm going to get in trouble. But if you evolved, you survived. And clubs that ran themselves on the old model died on the vine, including the club I played for, Chicago Collins. We all got old, nobody came behind us. But if this is a visa question, if you relied on immigration, you were done. Yeah. You're done.
Nick, maybe a couple of ways you could take this. Go ahead there.
One of our guys is stuck in Dublin right now from his visa. He didn't get back in the country, so this is a bit sensitive. It's an interesting one because, and I don't know how many years you came after me, but I did the whole college thing, so I was sorted.
Maybe if you could touch on that, because that was as you mentioned earlier on, you know, a lot of your, you know, people who were good at soccer like yourself went to England. That was the natural kind of path, but you went the other way. You came over here and got a scholarship.
I wasn't good enough, Rory. Thanks, yeah, cheers.
I didn't mean it like that. But
actually, the quick little story that was, I was playing with Drogheda and I was making my way, but it wasn't getting to England for trials or anything like that. And I remember my mum and dad, and anyone growing up in Ireland would know, a lot of the pros would come back injured or got involved in drink and drugs, whatever, and they'd know nothing to fall back on. And thank the Lord, my mum and dad found this opportunity. It's like, go get your education. And so went to Mississippi. Just because, again, it goes back to, I love the community talk, and Dean kind of started it, and I don't want to go back to it, but I think we'll do it after. But I went there because it was full of Irish and Scottish. But the visa, so when I came to Chicago in 2007, there was this onslaught of mainly English coaches, and the accent was getting them everywhere, right? It was parents just ate it up because the Premier League was English and so forth. And so I don't need to go into too much detail, but there was a lot of issues from the organizations that were doing the visas, and now they've been in a lot of trouble, let's just say. So, but I had a couple of lads on it as well, and girls, and eventually I realized that this wasn't a long-term fix, right, or goal in terms of what we wanted to build. So we've got one Scottish guy who we did sponsor. We got his green card actually 2 months ago, which was great after 10 years. But we decided to go back into the community within Chicago, and it was tough because they're not as passionate, and that's probably harsh to say because they are passionate, but there was just a different breed of what we are used to from home. And this past year, luckily, there's a Scotsman in here who works for us. We got Gary, another Irishman, an English girl. We've gone through some visa scenarios, and luckily some of them don't need them, but it's made a massive difference to what we're trying to do as a club. So in terms of the visa, I think the scholarship one is like, I mean, I think of, and I know this is going back to Ireland, I'm always trying to bring awareness to back home of everybody wants to play in England, right? Everybody. We know the percentages of who can actually do that. But this is just an amazing opportunity for people in Ireland and anywhere in Europe, really, to come here, get an education, and just, I mean, for me, I'm living a life in the game that I love, and being able to give back to it is special.
Not to go down a rabbit hole here now, the quick answer, how has Brexit affected all of this? The 30-second answer. In terms of visa, like, are lads still going in Ireland? Is that still the natural path to go to England, or is there new paths opened up, like out to Europe or coming to the States?
Like Nick said, a lot of players, if you're not going to... I feed this all to my friends. Like Nick says, he tells everyone back home, so I tell my coaching friends that are back in England, kids that aren't making it, for sure, get over to America. If you get an education in America, then the world's your oyster. It really is. So yeah, I've been kind of drumming into my coaching friends that are working in academies. If these kids aren't good enough, and I think a lot of coaches, you've got them for a couple of years, right? So you can tell this kid's probably not going to make it unless something drastic happens and he improves massively. So I'm trying to drum into them, get them over to America, get them an education. The MLS is getting better. We're getting the World Cup. There's a lot of avenues that are going to happen where you can get even coaching and stuff like that. Because back home, everyone wants to be a footballer or a soccer player. So
the numbers of who don't, I mean, it must be astronomical. I mean, 98, 99% of people don't make it, like, right? I mean, probably even more than that. I mean, Gary now played centre forward and centre half for Spurs, where Harry Kane is playing today, for reference for the people who don't know. But like, kids don't make the grade, right? I mean, there's only so many people like Gary that actually make it to play at the absolute highest level and to play against the Zidanes and the Ronaldos, you know. I mean,
I'm gonna do a little plug here because I know we're running out of time. So so anyone, obviously everyone knows the MLS, but the USL is the division below it, and we actually have USL 2 and W, which means it's considered semi-pro, but we have to call it pre-pro. But it's D1 athletes, top D1 athletes that play in this, and this is a platform for them to go pro. So we're having conversations of these kids want to go to Europe, and of course it is difficult now with everything that's going on, but I'm going to say to you guys that, you know, come out and support what we're doing with USL in Chicago. We're the only academy in Illinois with this. You can research it, but the goal of it is these local kids don't need to go to Europe, hopefully, in the long term. Now, obviously, if they're good enough, they'll make it, but there's so much more opportunity arising in the States, and again, with the build-up to the World Cup. But let's get off visas.
Yeah. Gary, Colm, actually, I was going to ask you, I mean, how your position, you're the Gaelic Games Development Officer, is your official title for?
Yeah, so officially my title is Gaelic Games Administrator. GDA is the short.
How did that even come about? I mean,
so how does it come about? Well, I suppose it was a bit of foresight maybe by the GAA, which is our organisation, but the Department of Foreign Affairs. So the Department of Foreign Affairs in Ireland identified the GAA worldwide as the largest cultural organisation outside of the island of Ireland. So I have equivalents in Sydney, Australia, in Toronto, in New York, and any city you can think of, there's a GDA administrator that's partly funded by the Gaelic GAA and by the Department of Foreign Affairs. So that's how it came about, and it's approximately 10 years ago. I wasn't the first one I ended up after, but I do believe it's working, and I do believe it's working in Chicago, and the numbers will tell you it's working. And like I said, I have contemporaries in New York, but we have them in Sydney, and we have them in Munich, and we have them all over the world. So that's where the Department of Foreign Affairs were a huge boost to the GA worldwide. And in fact, we're in the middle. I'm sure everybody in this organization would know about the Immigrant Support Fund. the GA would be part of that. We're called, in our world, we're called the Global Games Development Fund. But thanks to the Department of Foreign Affairs for always working on our behalf.
And also, I'm not sure if there's anyone here today, but we have to thank the DFA also for help and support. We get a grant to put on these types of conversations from the Department of Foreign Affairs. I have a question for Annie, but I first wanted to, I'm going to ask you about your Guinness relationship with the games. But has anyone got any questions from the audience? And if not, maybe just think about it, and when Annie's done with her answer here, we'll go out to the audience for questions. Dylan, you have a question there? You was waving at me. I do. Oh, okay, well, maybe I'll ask Annie your question for you. Annie, you work with Guinness. What's Guinness's relationship with the GAA right now?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to, it's a terrible job to work for Guinness, yeah.
Brutal altogether.
Yeah, it's brutal, yeah. No, it's a dream job, really. I've lived in several different cities, and kind of go back to the community thing was, the first thing I Googled when I get sent to different cities to work is whatever city I'm going to, like it was Columbus, Ohio, Columbus GAA, St. Louis. The first thing I Google is, Irish bar. Obviously, the nearest Irish bar near me, and then also, like, is there a GAA club in this city? So go back to the community. But, Guinness has a long-standing history with GAA. They sponsored the hurling championship for years. But in the U.S., Guinness is actually the official sponsor of the U.S. GAA. So basically, in that capacity, we have reps and all over the country, and we tell the clubs to encourage them to get involved with their local Guinness rep to do events, to do like the Face and the Pint events and sponsorships, sponsor jerseys. So one of the things that we do at the North American Finals every year, we've done it. I think this will be like our 5th year doing it now. We do a crossbar challenge. So I'm sure our soccer friends here are familiar with the crossbar challenge. So what we do is we have a football one and a hurling one, and men and women compete against each other because it's accuracy. It's not a strength competition. And one person from each club gets a chance to try to hit the crossbar, and it goes down to a knockout stage, and the eventual winner gets a set of jerseys sponsored by Guinness for their club for the next year, which if anybody's ever tried to, fundraising is hard. I'm sure anybody that's ever been involved in the club, it's always just a few handful of people that really kind of get behind it, and it is hard to raise money. So if you have your jerseys off your plate, it's always nice to have. So like I said, I was kind of the spearhead, really trying to force, poke in the back to Guinness to sponsor the GAA in the U.S. So, it's worked out really well.
I'd say it got a good ROI on that, in fairness, though.
Yeah, I know. We kind of fish. We
I'm going to go back to Dylan
tend to
here.
fish where the fish are.
Dylan, you had a question.
I did, and it was more aimed towards the city kind of aspect of it. As an American and an Irish heritage, there was always such a pride for being Irish in America. I had a buddy when I was in my teenage years who was like, "Have you ever heard of hurling?" And I was like, "No, what is it?" And he's showing me highlights of it, and it looked so cool. It was this combination of several different sports here. How do you think you can tap into that pride for American heritage to get more activism from that?
So appreciate the reference to hurling, because I am the National Hurling Development Officer. But so just a little background again. Hurling in the last 12 years in the United States, in the USGA governing body, we went from 24 hurling clubs to 63 hurling clubs. And that has not been started by Kilkenny people or Tipperary people. This has been started by American people in cities all across the United States. It is a very unique game. It's no diss on anybody up here, but there's nothing like hurling. It just is a very, very unique game. And when people get their teeth into it, it can be extraordinarily encapsulating. So we do encourage people to come out. We do encourage you to start a club. There are helps to start clubs, both coaching and financial. And just to go back to the game of hurling. If you give hurling a chance, it becomes an extension of your arm, and it becomes an extension of your body, and it connects you. Your hurling stick connects you to the actual game that you're playing. So if you take all the running and the really hard work out of it, hurling can be very fun, but the hard work is a different part of it. just a little thing, and we didn't plan this, and I didn't plan this, but I do a thing with youth sports called Play in the Park, where I, as the Games Development Officer, get out of Gaelic Park and get out of the north side, Peterson Park, and we go to your location. So we go to your school, we go to your subdivision, we go to your park, and I bring a bag of balls, and we do an hour and a bit of Gaelic games. And if 10 kids turn up and 3 of them come to Gaelic Park, I've had a hit. But how about we maybe do an adult play in the park? Let's pick Montrose Park, or let's pick a field somewhere. Do a play in the park. The boys can bring their ball. The rugby lads can bring it. The hurling and Gaelic football can bring it, and we'll bring play in the park to the Ireland network somewhere in the city.
Yeah, for sure.
How about that?
Yeah. I once, true story, almost got arrested for picking up a bag of hurls from Colm's wife. I'll tell you about that at the bar. So that's. Any other questions from the audience? Oh, here we go. Perfect. Didn't have to walk too far.
I have a question for Miss Annie. As a woman in sport, I had the privilege of playing field hockey, which is an obscure non-American sport. It was thrust upon me via school at a young age. But I want to know, for those of us who are not lucky enough to have that here in Chicago, and for all of us here in this room, what can we do to encourage more women and young girls here in Chicago to play these sports, especially the unladylike ones that are field hockey and hurling and all of the above?
I was actually just about to say something about that, so thank you very much for asking that.
Great question.
That's a great question, yeah. Like I said, recruitment is, in the GAA especially, like, you know, Colin would tell you too, like we tend to lose young girls, and that's just, I think it's any sport really, from like 13 odd age, they start to kind of, they trail off, they trickle off, and I think the biggest thing that I have when I like talk to other like adult women, like, you should come and try this, try playing camogie, especially camogie, like, or Gaelic football even, and they'll look at it and they'll go, you know, as women we tend to be more critical about ourselves than anybody else in the whole world. They think like, oh God, I'd be terrible. No, you don't want me. I would suck at this. I don't want to play this. Nobody wants to be the worst person. Like, I don't want to be the worst person in any team. But you know, I just would like to encourage people. Like, no one is going to shun you if you are not good. You know, there's practice makes perfect. Like, this is back to community. Like, you learn, you get to meet all different sorts of people from all over the world, that you get to build kind of a family around it. And I think what I'd like to harp on especially adult women is, this is, you know, especially moving to a new city, for especially people like we've had, you know, people coming from different cities. This is a way to meet friends. No one's gonna laugh at you. No one's gonna make fun of you. You have a spot on the team. You have friends around you, and yeah, like, I mean, obviously I'd want to build up as much recruitment as we possibly can. So I will get your number later, and you're going to come play camogie for us this summer. Actually, we actually have had a lot of field hockey girls come through our years, and they're the perfect, right? They're the perfect people to come and play. The same kind of crazy. You're not afraid to give a shoulder, and that's what we need. It's our 25th anniversary of St. Mary's this year, so we're really looking to try and get a good go of it. But I would encourage anybody, you know, send your daughters to come play for the youth program. It's a fantastic way to make friends outside of school. It's a fantastic way for women to make new friends and to have an outlet for your anger outside of and a great way for your fitness as well. Like, it's just fun.
Brilliant, great question. Any other questions? Oh, got a couple back here. We'll go with Rory first.
Hopefully for Darby.
I have a question for Gary. Welcome to Chicago. You've played professional sports, so you have two parts of the question. I just, it's a ruthless, probably professional soccer in England is ruthless. What was your highest moment, and then what was your lowest moment?
I think probably my Ireland debut would be my highest. I was lucky that I started at a little club, Luton. For people that don't know soccer, I think we were in kind of Division 3, if you think of the Premier League as Division 1. So I got brought by Tottenham and made my Ireland debut in the same week. And then I made my debut at Old Trafford on the Saturday and my Ireland debut on a Tuesday. So
not a bad week.
Looking back, it was an incredible week. Lows, I kind of broke my leg when I was about 21, when I was at probably the peak of my career. I started really great and everything was going well. I missed out on the World Cup because of that broken leg. I kind of got back. I think I played a couple of games before that and I missed out on the World Cup, which was Saipan, obviously. And Ireland did fantastic, and I'd love to have been involved in that. So certainly that would be my...
You could have taken Roy's place, Jesus.
Yeah. That would be for sure my biggest low, missing out on... I was 21, 22, and you think, well, there's 3 or 4 more World Cups for me. And there wasn't. And that's, so I look back on that, and that's, that kind of, it would be my lowest. Thank you.
So I'm the only Scotsman in the room. And I would say for Colm, shinty's maybe a wee bit better than hurling, but...
Ground hurling competition.
No, well, for me it's more of a check and challenge, and Nick will like this because he preaches about it at work. From me listening to everything that you guys are talking about is fantastic. My question is, why have you guys not been collaborating with each other more often? You know, I think it's like Dean's just had Niall come over, who's the head educator for the FAI and the soccer aspect, you know, and it's like, so why is rugby and GAA not being involved in that for your coaches as well?
From a Chicago point of view, I'm in. Can I shadow you boys at a couple of sessions?
For sure, and it's a great question. I think me and you have probably talked about this on the golf course. When I came out of college and got into coaching, I'm not lying when I said the industry was full of English. I'm not lying. And I actually just, not that it was a bad thing, I got caught up.
It is a bad thing.
I didn't say that.
You can put the camera on.
And it was interesting because this has come full circle for me, because when I first came to Chicago, I met the boys from the Kerry Man, which are the Pierces, and I got into the Irish Network back in 2007. And Rory, I remember, was there. And I made an effort, and then I just peeled away from the Irish Network. I don't know why. Again, you just get so busy with coaching. And then through COVID, which we probably all did, took a little check on ourselves. I was like, you know what? I don't really have any Irish mates. They're all English or Scottish. And so I reached out and got on the advisory board of the Irish Network, and since then it's opened up my eyes to be like, and we go back. I want to go back to the community piece, because I come from St. Kevin's Boys in Dublin. If anyone knows, it's probably, yes. And there's a home farm down there, rival. But that, to me, I grew up, my uncle was involved, and I grew up as a 3-4-year-old. As soon as I could walk, I was at that club. And it was an institution, and it was only a boys' club at the time. It has become a girls' club since a little bit. But we grew up looking at the senior team, which was an amateur team, as our heroes. We travelled the country in Ireland, going to all the games. And the community aspect, which you guys talked about, which is going on, and I brought my future father-in-law down there. He's a rugby guy. This summer, and we were blown away, and I hadn't been there in God knows how long. So it really, to your point, Troy, it's really opened up that I need to make more of an effort, and this has been a great, hopefully, little kick up the backside for us.
And
good question.
Maybe I'll even delve in, because this would be controversial from a Gaelic Games point of view. Absolutely, we're an insular organisation. We have looked inwards more than we've looked outwards, and I don't know if that's to our detriment or to our strength. I personally think that the GA does a very good job. Even within the island of Ireland, we have more people playing Gaelic games now than we ever had. We have more young women and adult women playing Gaelic games. We were in a crazy situation. We had 3 organisations. We're now finally in one organisation on the island of Ireland. But in the United States, we've always pretty much run our clubs as all, say, men and women hurling and so on. But why don't we collaborate? The truth is that if I'm running a Gaelic Games program, I have to position myself in the United States and in Chicagoland where I can get my players. Always in all the time, soccer always finished on the 31st of May. Traditionally in this country, as long as I was running the program, 31st of May, big tournament in Libertyville, and typically travel soccer finished, and travel baseball finished around the same time. Funny, COVID has hurt me in that soccer, for sure, baseball certainly, has extended our season into June and July. We always positioned ourselves to start in spring, but we hit the ground running June, July, August. my big job was extending the season. We had already made 3 months. But I'm after the children for June, July, and August. I wonder if the boys are after the same, and we'd be dueling competing organizations. But I don't know if I have the answer to what I've just even said, but to that point, in Gaelic Games, my job is to position myself where we have a viable program ready, willing, and to go in mid-spring for a summer program. And that's my job. I honestly, before you even asked the question, I was saying, geez, I must go to a practice here. My daughter's now in volleyball. I got kicked out because I was in it's closed sessions, and I hid above in an office looking at them coaching. Now, I'm not joking you. I learned more in 3 travel volleyball sessions than I did in any coaching course. Then I got kicked out. But I'd love to shadow the boys. And does the GA have something to offer in the coaching landscape? Yeah, I believe we do. So I don't know if that answers you, but I filled about 3 minutes.
I think, go on.
That's to the point. And also, it's like you're saying May, June, July, that's when you need to be primed. But all those other months, you could be coming to us. We could help you, and then when it comes time that it's your season, we would be happy to support you.
Yeah, I mean, listen. If you're not listening, you're not learning, and I'm listening. I promise you.
So that one, so we've, and it goes back to collaboration, but we've worked with basketball clubs and volleyball clubs in the city where we'll get ahead of it and we'll say, right, your U9s are Monday, Wednesday. All right, we'll stick them on Tuesday, Thursday. And I've always been a big believer in multi-sport athletes. I think it's so important for their growth in athletics, and we would absolutely. And
yeah, and listen,
really
my goal is to put Gaelic Games jerseys on the backs of children and adults. But let's talk about the kids program for now. That's my job. That's your job. Maybe we should be doing the same angle.
Yeah, you hit the point I was just about to say. I know, worked very closely with Dean over the years. I know he's always encouraged multi-sports. Go play basketball, go play volleyball. That hand-eye coordination, everything else. It all builds. I think if you just play soccer and that's all you play, you lose out a little bit.
I can guarantee you, if they come from Gaelic Games, they'll be fine, hardy soccer players. I can.
Well, I just said to Annie before we started, I was like, I want to get you guys out to toughen up some of our kids.
You can try a bit of rugby too.
I'm coming back for another question. As I'm walking down here, Gary, what would you have played if you hadn't played soccer? What would your sport have been?
Definitely rugby. So my school our second sport was rugby. And they kind of entwined together, kind of rugby and soccer. It was kind of over the same season, so I didn't get to play as much as I wanted to. But yeah, I was a huge rugby fan when I was growing up. I still am. But that would have definitely been for sure. No, for sure, Ireland waiting for the World Cup. I love the Six Nations and stuff like that. So definitely rugby would be my next sport. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to circle back to the original introductions and the comments about the mental health in sports. And we all know how important physical activity is to our mental health. And I think your connections of bringing parents in and educating them in a different way, not to be so focused on winning, and participatory sports, kind of more cooperation and fun, that in the suburbs there are park districts hungry for this kind of programming and maybe this model. It doesn't sound like you guys need more to do, but that connection with coming out of COVID and the stresses that are on our children, and that the relief that participatory sport and sport for fun, the antidote, not a silver bullet, but certainly a response to that. I just was very interested in, again, some of those introductory remarks and the dots you were connecting. And I know park districts would love to have, as opposed to reacting to parents and banning them and trying to redirect or really respond, as opposed to be preventative or try a new model, if you could speak to that.
What suburb are you in? Can you say?
Sorry?
What suburb are you in?
Wilmette.
Wilmette, okay.
Yeah.
That's tough work up there. It's funny, I just had a call today about technology, and the woman was from Glenelg, and she kind of said the same thing. And I think for me personally, being biased, I believe our model, what we do, it's not being replicated throughout Chicagoland. And so I think I would welcome that challenge. And yes, Troy and Gary will laugh because we are always doing too much. But we have got ourselves into in the suburbs now, and people are like, wow, this is like a completely different, I want to say coach philosophy, but it's more of an ethos and a DNA, I guess. And just that's good news.
Boutros Ghali wouldn't solve some of the parent issues. Who's the new general secretary? Yeah, that's the only one I know.
Yeah, I think. Sorry. When you talk about parents, and like, it's the big thing. I think Nick mentioned it earlier, is educating parents, and we're all up here where even soccer, as big as it is in the US, there's still football, basketball, baseball that are all bigger sports than that. So while soccer might be the overpowering one on this panel, we're all part of minority sports. And I think the biggest thing is educating the parents, as Nick said, bringing them in. And I listened to a podcast actually yesterday of a basketball coach in Washington, D.C., this coaching a high school team. And he said instead of having the parents sitting opposite the teams on their bench, he actually has the parents sitting behind it. So they're not looking at little Johnny or little Mary that's playing on the team. They're supporting the team and not focusing on their own individual, because that's where part of the problem lies, is they only see the development or the lack thereof of their child. And by putting them in a position where you're bringing them in and you're getting them looking at the whole team and they're seeing the bigger picture of its long-term development, and it's taken, as Nick said earlier, the holistic approach. And I think everybody on the panel would agree that, you know, especially with kids, you're looking to, number one, you're looking for them to get better in the sporting code that they're participating in while you have them, but you want to leave, and I think everybody's mentioned it today, you want to leave these people better people, or these young people as a better person by the time that they leave your care and go to the next step. So I think the biggest thing for me is certainly it's parent education and educating them on what you're doing and keeping them involved in what's happening.
Great question, great answers. Any other? We got one down here. I'll come back to you, Fran. I'll go down here.
Oh yeah. I just asked Gary what his funniest moment away with the Irish national team was.
Hey, now we're doing
that you're allowed to talk about.
My funniest moment? I don't know, you put me on the spot a bit there. God, I can't think of any.
Well, how about we go to Fran's question? We give Gary a minute to think about a really good question. Yeah. All right, you think about a good story. Yeah, you think about a good one.
I need to.
My question in your program with the soccer, football, whatever, rugby, Gaelic sports, special need kids. Do you have programs for those? I got 6 kids of my own. My oldest is 37. My daughter, she's special needs. I got 5 boys, 29 through 20. They're all soccer players. One D1, went MLS, etc. So I always look at my daughter. The only sport she went technically to see, we tried all the boys and everything else, but they love the football. So she'd go along with them. And to this day, when I go to Indiana to see my son, she'd love going for the weekend with me. But there was nothing for her growing up, sports-wise. So again, do you guys cater to any of that, or are you looking into that at all? Because there's a lot of kids out there with special needs who never get the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I love that, Fran. And I was part of a group, Chicago Stars, it was called, in the city. It was pre-COVID anyway. And it was just very difficult to get numbers, but I ran it for 2 years. I volunteered twice a week to do it. And the mum that was leading it through her son with cerebral palsy, she just got exhausted trying to pull it together. So it's something we definitely talked about to revisit it. It definitely needs to be done, and if you're open to it, put you on the spot to help us out.
And come help us the day after.
But yeah, well, I'll just talk from my experience in it, and I had done it in London actually in the build-up to the Olympics. I've worked with kids with disabilities and adults, and honestly, I went to England to go into the academy system as a coach. That was my kind of ultimate dream, and as soon as I had that experience, it changed everything for me, and I came straight back to America and was like, this is where I need to be. And that's when I got involved with this group, and I'm glad you actually brought it up because it hasn't been on the radar, and now you'll definitely be. I'm getting tested here tonight to put more things on the list. But yeah, I'd ask or welcome any help and support in that. But I don't know if you guys have anything that we could team up with.
And not just to give the easy answer, Fran. Yes, Gaelic Games would welcome any player that needs some extra assistance in our sport. No doubt. Do we need to get better at it? Yes, for sure. But yes, we would welcome any player within that needs that help, extra help.
Sean, do you have something to add to that?
Yes. So rugby obviously is a sport for all, any size, athletic ability. We can always get you out on the field. We at the high school that I coach at, we have a kid with autism that wanted to come out and play. He saw us practice. He came out and he played, and he actually started in 3 games. So we do, there was some minor accommodations made for him, but it just getting him out on the field. He brought 2 other kids from the special needs class in the school. So we would make every accommodation for any shape, size, talent who wants to play rugby, because it's not just it's a sport for life. You get involved with rugby, can take you anywhere in the world, at any level or any ability. It's a highly contact sport, so there's not a lot that at a competitive level, but a participation level of absolutely. Would love to do more of it.
Good stuff. Any other questions? I've got a wrap-up question for each. Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Rory, can I just jump in on that question?
Go ahead, Dean, yeah.
I don't think it's even well documented, and they don't do a good job of advertising it, but if there's an AYSO soccer organisation in your area, they have what's called a VIP programme, which is ran for kids with special needs, and it's specifically for them, and I think it's free. I think in LaGrange it's a free programme, and what they do in LaGrange, they'll get like the high school senior soccer players will actually come out and they'll work with the kids throughout the season, so it's a really, really good programme.
I'm not really talking for my own kids.
Yeah.
Because my son, who went to high school in Highland Park, he was hanging out with some special needs girls he was friends with. The teacher was a little nervous, and he said, "What's going on with you and these girls?" And he says, "My sister's handicapped. I understand them."
Yeah. I actually worked in the VIP program in Highland Park.
So I'm just saying there should be a lot more for special needs.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying that's like in any sport. Like I was on the 60 Minutes or something the other day. There was a kid who played basketball, high schooler. He'd no legs, and he wanted to play high school basketball, which he'd say is like as a coach, there's no way. This kid that actually made it, got to play high school. He was a great treat, like from shooting from distance. So give him the ball in the street, boom. It was just unbelievable. It bring tears to your eyes to see a kid who technically shouldn't be able to do anything. He played basketball. So there are, it's not just one kid in a rugby club or a gay hurling or football. It's getting teams to have a team with special needs kids who can compete at whatever level they compete. And they don't get stuck into each other, but there's certain things you can do, pull a ribbon or whatever.
So I'm going to need some direction on this, but I'll make a commitment right here. I have an Easter Saturday Irish Sports Day on April 8th, and it's a rotational thing where you rotate through pods. I will have a pod available, and I'll work on getting some special needs players into the program for that particular day. I'm going to need some direction on it, but I absolutely will make that commitment.
It's great to see everybody here, especially everybody's participating in youth sport. Just get back to the aspect of the parent involvement in youth sport, and I've talked to a person who's very heavily involved in youth sport, and he said the best team he ever coached was a team from an orphanage, because the problem is that you have this toxic, and I do think it's the desire in the States to get to third level. They think they want to get a free education out of it, and really the numbers are kind of frightening that they say that there's about nearly 1 million kids playing high school football in the States, and of the 1 million kids, only 400 will get to college, And then after that, the other statistic is that of those 400 kids, maybe 4 or 5 will get to the professional level. And the biggest challenge is that you have 1 million kids looking for 4 jobs, you know. So that's all I'm saying, is that all the work you're doing is very, very admirable. And I really appreciate all the effort you've made, because it's a joy to see. Thank you.
Not to get the last word on that, but I have the mic, so. I think that is. Annie mentioned it earlier, though, that Gaelic Games, playing as an adult in Gaelic Games, you can come into Gaelic Games as a grown man or woman in your 20s, in your 30s, and that happens all over this country. So if you are done with your college, or if you're done playing sports as a teenager, Gaelic Games has an opportunity. You do have an opportunity to play as an adult in Gaelic Games.
Great stuff. So I'm going to come back to Gary's question. I see he's still thinking. But first, I've just to close it up, and if there's any more questions after, I just have a close-out question myself here, and we'll go back to audience if you got any other questions, or we can bring it out to the bar afterwards either. But
tell the real story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll start with Annie. Go this way and come back to Colin, because you spoke. But like, let's end on a positive note. You know, what do you see positive for your? I mean, for each. Same question to everyone. You know, for your discipline, your code, your sport. What's I guess first of all, what do you see positive? What do you hope is going to happen, and what do you think is going to happen moving forward? Let's start with Annie.
Thank you for starting with me. No, I mean, obviously, like, I think everybody here, you know, wants to see more people playing their games. Like, and I think that the idea of this collaboration, you know, like you said, like to your question about getting, you know, lacrosse girls and you know, getting more cross sports. And I think there's, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but there's always been this, you know, this research where your multi-sport players, you know, have less injuries, and they're more coordinated, and getting more of that collaboration, I think, that's something what I really hope for. Just what I take from tonight is being able to get more collaboration with getting more people, more young girls and boys to, you know, to play both sports. What I hope for Camogie is, you know, that we can train some new people to come in and take over the club, and hopefully get some more clubs in the city. Like, it's not fun being the only club in the city. Like, you know, I'd like to see some competition. But what I really want for Camogie is to develop the younger girls, where they, you know, like, I think part of what the problem is, not the problem, but is that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, young girls that they don't see where they can go with Gaelic Games, is, you know, because we don't play on a Sunday in Gaelic Park, and I'd love to be able to have recurring games for us to play on a Sunday in Gaelic Park, where the girls that Colm coaches and everybody else that works with him, that coaches the young girls, can see our club play on a Sunday in Gaelic Park and be like, I want to be like them, you know, and stay in the game and have something to look forward to, and, you know, not drop off at, you know, 14, 15, 16 years old, as just, you know, to, you know, not necessarily me, but the next girls that are going to be playing the sport, and have the young girls looking up to them. That's what I hope for.
Great answer. Sean?
I think some of the exciting things for rugby coming forward, obviously, was recently the announcement of a new MLR, Major League Rugby professional team in Chicago. I've had conversations with the leadership there, and they're reaching out into the community to help promote the game, support the coaches, and help, you know, teaching the kids how to play rugby, and the aspiration of our kids that there is a professional sport to get to, if that's a pathway that they want to take. The other great thing coming up in the future is the World Cup is coming to the United States, and the women's is in 31 and the men's is in 33. So there, you know, a lot of development and growth for the game coming up over the next 10 years. It's all exciting.
Great stuff. Thanks, Sean. Dean, obviously you're not coming from a perspective just with the mental health aspect of the game. What's your hopes and for the future here?
Yeah, so not just for soccer. I mean, it's great to be on a panel with everybody tonight. Heading the game, as I said earlier, is primarily around soccer, but in the US we want it to be kind of the go-to sign for sports, and not just, we've talked a lot about the youth game tonight, not just at the youth game, at adult level, and for people in the room tonight, we want it to be normalized that, you know, if you see a friend and they're not acting normally, ask how are you, and they just say I'm fine, but you know they're not fine. Can we have that kind of I don't know the word that I'm trying to say, but could we go to them a second time and say, you know, how are you really doing, and double checking on them, because sometimes that is what makes all the difference. And being able to do that, as I say, if we can do that as adults, then we're going to build compassionate children that are coming through in the next generation too. So I suppose just once we wrap up later, if anybody wants to talk more about Heading the Game, what can be done to help it grow in the community of Chicagoland, and particularly with the Irish community, because it's so, you know, it's so prevalent back in Ireland. And feel free to have a chat with me. And I'm from Cavan, so if anybody wants to buy me a pint, I won't say no. Like, so. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Dean. Gary, we're gonna leave you the last word with the Irish soccer team story. So don't tell us that now, but maybe if you could maybe just what are your hopes for the sport of soccer in the States moving forward?
I think just participation. Everyone here, we want more kids playing the sport. We want more adults playing the sport. I think going to a grassroots level, where we've obviously talked a few times about the statistics. Statistics aren't great for getting a scholarship or becoming a professional, but the statistics are great for making friends. Your mental health when you're around a group, when you're playing a kind of a group sport, you're getting to meet people, and your fitness as well. You're getting outside, you're getting fit, doing something hopefully you love. So hopefully soccer will keep going. Obviously we're on the upward trend. We've got the World Cup coming. But yeah, just kind of getting away from I need my kid to get a scholarship, or I need my kid to go, because we've talked about the odds of that happening. But we just want people playing the sport. We want the sport growing. We want everyone to enjoy it, and that's the main thing. And going on your mental health, if you're playing with other kids and you're making friends, then I guess everyone's a winner, right?
You're not stuck in the basement playing PlayStation and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I have 3 nieces, and I'm trying to drum it into them. Get outside, get playing sports, because that's how you're going to make friends, right? So yeah, so I think that's what we want from soccer. That's how we want soccer to go. And touch wood, some players might get to that level, but as long as the majority are enjoying it and they're getting outside and getting health and fitness, then I guess that's what we all want.
Brilliant. Nick, how about yourself?
I'm going to contradict that a little bit, because we just launched an esports program. There's more scholarships now and that. I think for me, being positive on this is being in the position I've been for nearly 12, 15 years, leading this club, and everything we touched on. I do think and I do believe the attitude and the mentality is changing with parents, and I think it's COVID has helped in a way because of the mental health piece, that everybody's more aware of it. And so they are, like, I mean, I speak to parents, they will compliment us on that. We are a club that, again, buzzword being holistic, we do care about the kids' well-being, and the coaches for that matter. So I do think the wave is turning, or the tide is turning, let me say. Tide is turning. So I do think, to leave this with everyone, I think, and it's come up a few times, it is positive. I will say that there's many conversations I'm having on a daily basis that it's turning, and I'm excited for that to continue. Now, that's on us to do that job. And the second thing I will say is the collaboration piece. We've began to do it again in our own industry, but now I like the fact that we've been forced, and Troy will hold me to that, to do that collaboration, because again, at the end of the day, it's kids. It's kids in sport. Like, I don't care if someone plays Gaelic over soccer. I don't care. So I'm positive. All the other stuff the guys talked about, I think the other mentality I think is changing is that, and I know it's not fully changed, is yes, there are parents out there that want little Johnny or little Megan to go play in college, but I don't think it's the majority. I've got parents in the club here that will say, they'll actually come and tell me, look, I don't want Shannon to go play in college. I just want them to have a good time with their friends, etc., etc. So I think we're on a positive future in terms of sport and mental health, and hopefully Dean can drive that home here in Chicago ahead in the game. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nick. Colm, what do you want to leave us with a positive note for the GAA?
I started by making a mistake by standing up. So
he's standing up now. Jeez, we could be here all night.
No, we won't be here all night, but I don't want to let Gary away with his story, so he's going to close it out. But to talk about Gaelic games, come see me in the bar. I've got business cards. Your adults and your children in your sphere of influence have an opportunity to play Gaelic games. But the opportunity I have here with the mic is to thank the Irish Network for inviting all of us, and to thank the DFA for sponsoring stuff like this, and the main man himself, Rory, put this together in the last couple of weeks. So thank you all very much for having us. Hope you got something out of it, and I still want to hear this story.
No, I didn't realise we were going to be filmed, so I don't want to.
Well, hold on, you know what? And
we've got lawyers in the building as well. I don't want to
our
put
event for
myself.
tonight. Okay.
We were the consummate professionals, so I don't want to.
Can we stop the recording now? Yeah, I think we should. Yeah.
No, yeah, we'll do it at the bar where I feel a bit more comfortable exposing my teammates.
Tell us the clean, tell us the easy version.
Sorry,
now.
It was a good question, and I
Yeah.
have one or two, but not at the minute.
Why don't you stop it? Yeah, let's stop it. Because in all seriousness, stories get out these days when they're on social media. And
Wait for my book.
Yeah. Gary's he's getting a movie deal here out of it. So, all right, we got no phones up. We got the live feed is down. So, Gary, tell us the story.
No.
Okay, no. Okay, all right. We'll move it to the bar. Ask him in the bar. All right, well, I would just like to take the opportunity to thank everyone. Thank you to the panelists. Can everyone give the panelists a big round of applause? We'll move out there and we'll hear the stories out there.